Hey ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the stash. In this video we'll be reviewing the kit that lays in front of you. The brand new tool, Hasegawa Toyota MR2 AW11 late version G Limited supercharger T-bar roof 1988, right? Okay, good. Almost fell off the table reading this because it would be Hasegawa's job to fill that entire top shadow bar with letters and numbers. So this kit does represent the top of the line, most option version, T-bar roof, meaning a T-tops, version of the MR2 that you could purchase in 1988 should you have resided in the country of Japan. Yes, unfortunately this is, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, a JDM only version. I don't believe we got the G Limited supercharger here in the United States anyway. We did get the supercharged version, but not quite this same version. Be that as it may, this is a brand new kit. Just was released at the beginning of 2022 and should, in theory, we'll take a look at it here in depth in a second, be the preeminent first-gen MR2 kit available. Now, there's only one other because the Revell one was a rebox of the Fujimi kit. But, yeah, curbside, kinda. A little bit of a paint tray engine in this for a little bit of detail, a little bit of under tray decal, not a full engine by a stretch of the imagination, but still kind of an interesting blend of the two. Be interested to see if this also gets any kind of US export left-hand drive version in the future. Don't necessarily see the engineering in there for that, but certainly should have a little bit of interest to us US folks who can get over the whole wrong side of the steering wheel road thing. But if you can't, oh well. See you in the next one. If you can, you want to see what's in this kit? Let's get started. So here's what you get when you open the box up. You have one bag here that has your clear parts, your paint mask, and your decal sheet. You have a little baggie here with your tires and your polycaps. You have the body itself in its own little baggie. And then you have all the rest of the parts in one great big sandwich bag. This is Hasegawa's pride and joy, not wasting plastic. You do not get 92 parts bags. You get one, and you'll like it. And we have the literature of the kit. So let's go ahead and break bags, get that crinkly stuff out of the way so you don't have to listen to it, and we'll be right back. Alright folks, so we're going to start with the clear parts, mainly because I just want to look at them and then get them back in the bag before anything bad happens to them. You see a little bit of future in this. As we do Hasegawa kit reviews, we'll sort of point this out to you. Tommy is pretty good for this too. You notice there's a big spot here missing, right? But there's a runner stub coming out to it. So there's clearly another version of this kit coming at some point in the future that will require a different taillight bezel and either no T-bar roof or a different style T-bar roof. So yeah, we're over here starting out. I have my pointer, but then it moved. Get the old spatula of knowledge out. Yes, everything is something of knowledge in here. So again, you have your rear taillight section here, your T-bar roof section. This is your sort of your rear window, if you will, the window between the engine compartment and the interior compartment, your side windows, your windshield, your headlights. Remember, we got flip-up headlights on this. The option does exist in this kit to display them with the headlights flipped open. Your turn signals, being a foreign car, this does have side repeaters that go on the front fenders. And then this little piece right here is the rear sort of spoiler. As you'll see in the instructions, you paint this smoke and stick a Toyota decal on it. So let's take this up and bring it to you in sense of getting a good view of this taillight panel, which is a multiple paint process taillight panel. You are going to have to paint part of this black and part of it red and part of it amber, because it obviously has a license plate surround in there as well. The lock to your trunk is in there, minor trunk that there were on the MR2s. You have your T-bar roof with its little attachment points that you can see from the outside of the car. The inside of this does have a pretty good, robust edge to it, and there are window masks for specifically these two panels, so painting this won't be too much of a drama. The idea is you paint it smoke, and then you come back, put the masks on, and paint the outside edge trim, your semi-gloss black or your trim black, whatever you usually use to paint your window surrounds. And then your rear window here, actually it's better without my hand there, has defroster lines built into it. These two side window pieces are going to have window masks for this opera window in the back, and then the front windshield also has a mask for it as well. Your Headlight has, some texture engraved to it, so do your turn signals, and actually so does your marker lights. So that's kind of fun. We'll get out the old optical clarity tests, courtesy of LB Productions and their rep rims. Wow, easy for me to say. Ladies and gentlemen, I just had a stroke live on camera. Anyway, let's take a look here. We'll come backity. You're getting a little bit of distortion on the outside edge of the windows, but those are also going to be painted black in time for the window trim. So everything looks good there. These side windows perhaps not quite so good, but that's probably a nature of them being, beveled like that. They're not at all flat. So, yeah, that's definitely a very, very acceptable windshield. And move on to the next part. So this baggie with the tires has your poly caps, which is kind of interesting. They're being on a sort of a rigid tree. These aren't plastic; they're vinyl. So this tree twists and stuff. But it's kind of interesting to see them still attached. But excuse me, I've got a cough, but I chose not to. These are just some nameless off-brand replacement tires from your local 5 and dime auto store. Apparently, different decent tread pattern in there. These look pretty narrow, but they were not the widest wheels back in 1988 in the first place. So, got a little web in the middle you got to cut out, but all in all, looks pretty good. I think these tires are shared with some other kits, frankly, around this period that would use these rims. I don't think these are the first time, or the wheels rather. I don't think it's the first time I've seen these T75 part tires, but that's a good look at those. All right, so first up, as is the tradition with a Hasegawa kit, if you've never seen a Hasegawa kit, most of them are broken down like this, where the seats are two separate small runners like this. This would indicate to me that future versions of this kit may include a different set of seats, as it's very easy to replace this little injection mold insert than it would be, of course, to replace an entire tree itself. So these are going to be 3-piece seats. Decent engraving on the seat faces, as well as your headrest and your seat back. The seat backs probably will not be able to be seen in this when it's built. A little test fitting will tell you what you need to, because the way these are designed as far as painting, you take the headrest, you mount it to the back of the seat, and then the whole thing, this becomes one part that goes into the back of the actual seat. The back of the seat, as far as this middle and sort of back part, is supposed to be a black color for the hard vinyl that these were covered in, or it's really hard black plastic, because they did fold forward to, I believe there's just a little bit of a storage net behind these things in the real car, if I remember the real car correctly, all these years later. But these don't fold forward, and you will more than likely never see them when they're crammed in the interior, when we show you the interior in a second. But yes, there are 2 seats. They, when you pick up one of these Hasegawa kits, the seats are never in a runner with the actual kit. Now they do have runner cutoffs here. These have been cut off something, so I've been interested to see if we can match them up on another gray tree here. But be that as it may, those would be your seats. Then I'm going to do these in color rather than order. So there are 4 sprues total of sort of a muddy gray, I guess would be the best way to describe that color, right? So on this sheet here, this decal tree here, decal tree, wow, I need to go to bed. Anyway, on this parts runner here, you have your steering wheel, your center radio faces, and your HVAC controls, your center console itself, and this is the non-aspirated engine top. There are 2 different engine building versions in this, which we'll get into as we go along. There is the supercharged T-bar roof, and there is a naturally aspirated metal roof. So this is the air box and the intake plenum for the naturally aspirated version of the car. And then you have down here the front grille for below the bumper and above the lip spoiler. And then these 2 pieces right here are actually, zoom them all the way up here, are actually the switch gear that goes on each side of the instrument binnacle. If you know anything about 1980s Toyota, they love to put the headlights, the wiper switches, and things like that on little knobs. And this is the same thing with like what GMCs, or not GMCs, well GMCs, but also Chevy the Silverados in like '88 and stuff like that. Grand Ams, Pontiacs, all a bunch of them had those buttons that ran down the side of the instrument display rather than being on like switches and knobs and stuff like that. So that's what those two little pieces are. So that's kind of neat that these are separate. Painting them will be infinitely easier than trying to deal with doing something with them otherwise. And yeah, that's pretty cool. And your door card's pretty Spartan, but it was a pretty Spartan car. It does have the door pull, and overall pretty good looking vehicle all told, or a good looking sprue, I guess I should say. Vehicle's not bad, half bad either. On this next parts runner here, we have a bunch of the suspension and the rest of the interior. Now, another thing that this vehicle offers as an option is this little corner down here, which is known as Parts Runner SB. And these are the automatic parts. So this is your automatic gear shift, a replacement for the hole in that center console for the automatic gear shift selector, right? It was have your neutral park and all that stuff. And then a single pedal for the brake pedal, because obviously you don't need a clutch anymore. So what you do with these, we'll show you in the instructions, is you cut the clutch and the brake off, and then there's a recess here in the back for applying that single brake for the automatic. So that's how they deal with that. Up front here, let's see, on the regular parts tree, we got these are a couple different styles of tow hooks. I believe you only use one style of them for this, so the other side obviously is for the other style of vehicle. You have the front license plate bracket, your rear license plate bracket, your third brake light, your rearview mirror, your windshield wipers, and then you have the front suspension component that's slipping my mind right now. You have your steering rack, and then this is the intercooling piping system from the radiator back to the car. Remember, this is a mid-engine car where the radiator is still out front. You have sort of the back half of your exhaust here, and then you have the sort of the lower A-arms, because remember, this will be the bottom of the car. So your lower A-arms, your open headlight buckets, your upper center console, and this is the cover to your instrument binnacle. And what I mean by upper center console is, when you look at this center console, it only goes to, okay, I was on camera. I thought I was on camera for a second there. Is, right, leads to here and has this nub in it, right? So this part right here comes down, on top of it, slots into here and goes up the back wall of the interior, which, again, we'll show you in a second when we get to the interior tub, but that's a cool piece that this is separate. That makes painting it a great deal easier because it's not integrated into the interior compartment. This is going to be, of course, your steering rack, or your steering column. Yeah, there we go. That's the word I want. And you have your parking brake, your stick shift, and the sort of boot around your stick shift. So your instrument panel has a nice level of engraving there. You can see these two sort of pieces, two holes here for attaching your knobs that are on the sides of the instrument binnacle. Your stripped out center console here, so they can put different audio equipment in here for an older car that may not have, I believe, a CD track in this car. And then, yeah, your pedals are attached here, but again, we covered how you cut those pedals off if you don't want them. And overall, the engraving on this is very crisp, very clean, nice engraving level back here on the exhaust pipe. Painting that a couple of different colors and then giving it a wash will really make it pop. And I do enjoy the fact that we include the automatic stuff as being a separate series of parts, rather than it being something you just sort of have to kind of figure out how this would look if you had to cut it apart yourself, and so on and so forth. So this parts runner here is going to be basically the bottom end of the car. This is the under tray protector for basically for your cooling system. Remember that those pipes are going to plug into the top of here that are bringing the coolant back from the radiator. Bottom half of your engine, a little splash plate here. These are going to be your front coilover uprights. They have little attachment points here for that steering arm for making sure that you are able to turn the wheels if you so desire. Your rear suspension, a second rack and pinion, so we need to make sure we use the right one. Actually, I believe this is the actual steering column. This thing that I called a steering column a second ago is actually the transaxle for the rear end, right? So this will slot up into here like that, and that is going to be your rear transaxle. So correction made before the comments got ugly. Radiator, your rear coilover and uprights, your disc brakes, which are just piss on the plate flat. They've got no kind of cross drill or anything to them. And then this is the lower engine block, if you will. You've got like I've got to guess probably the air conditioning compressor hanging off down here. Your exhaust will plug into here, and then this piece will plug onto the top of here, right? And then this is the top part that will show through the engine hatch. That has the battery. It has your windshield washer fluid bottle. I think it is windshield washer. Actually, I think it's the overflow for the radiator, based on the fact that it's white with a black cap. And then a piece of piping here, and then you have the top of the engine block, the cylinder head really, engraved on top of here. And then you've got a little bit of a strut back here for a different component. Again, all your engraving here is very, very nice, very crisp, clean. What we're sort of expecting out of a Hasegawa kit at this point in terms of detail level and parts breakdown. Your back of your disc brakes really aren't anything to write home about there. And then you can see these 4 buses here receive these 4 points on the bottom of the engine top, if you will. And so that's going to, well, actually, this is the engine bottom, this is the engine top. But anyway, it's going to lock these 2 pieces together so they're not going to slide around once you have it assembled. And that is the last sort of muddy gray sprue we have. And then we have one big old white parts runner, and then everything else is smaller. So let's start with the big white one. Make sure we don't have to zoom out. I think we're good there. This is obviously your interior. This is obviously your chassis pan, your hood, your rear spoiler, your flying buttress, your rear bumper, and then the rear bulkhead for the engine compartment. So, rear mid-engine, rear-wheel drive car, right? So your engine compartment is back here, not up here. Good detail on this. Everything looks nice in terms of overall engraving detail. You even have a little bit of a little bit of an exhaust shielding piece here. So painting this a little bit of a different color as the exhaust pipe comes by will look good. Depending on how used you want this car to look, a wash on this will make a lot of this engraved detail pop out. Remember, this is a unibody car, so this chassis, should you build it factory fresh, would be body color. So keep that in mind when you're picking out a body color. Make sure you have enough paint to do that. On your interior tub here, you can see this sort of like little engraving area back here. This is where that upper center console mounts, and then your center console mount goes in, your center console itself goes in here, and then it, like I said, climbs the wall. Your seats are going to anchor here, which means the seat back is going to be like this. You are not going to see the seat back. So your choice of painting that seat back 3 different colors is totally up to you. You're never going to be able to see it because the rear window is up here, and it's going to be like at headrest level. This part right here is part of the frame of the car in real life. So this back portion of the interior cabinet or tub has to be painted body color as well. So keep that in mind when you start building, because you're seeing the instructions in a second here. Start with this tub for the interior. So right up front, you're going to need body color, and probably going to need to prime this rather than just sort of going at it, because you're going to be using a body color gloss back here rather than just a flat black paint or whatever. Up front here, you've got your hood, which is, or your front, will be your front hood, right? But it's not actually the hood in this car. You've got engraved windshield washer fluid ejectors, a little thing here for the Toyota logo that'll go on the front. This is, again, like I said, the rear buttress, or sort of the rear firewall, if you will. It's in the actual kit itself that'll mount under here, sort of to keep you from looking into the future back here. So it'll give you a back wall to this, because obviously there's a front wall in here as it is. And again, rear bumper. This is the sort of the inside of the flying buttress on the car, which will make more sense when you look at the actual body of the car. But this holds your rear window in, and then there's, again, a rear spoiler back here. This piece right here is going to be your T-bar roof, if you will, right? So this has the lower front valance, and this is the bottom of it here. So this is basically upside down, right? So really, in real life, you're looking at it like this as far as this lower balance goes. That little grill piece we showed you goes in here. This is your front bumper, which does sit like this with your spots for your turn signals. Your side view mirrors, your side air intake, which goes onto the car right there. And then the outside of that flying rear buttress. So that'll cover up the seam line of mating it. So all in all, looking good there. And then this has a couple of different interesting options on it, right? So this little tree here has your solid metal roof. So this is the replacement for the T-bar roof and that little section of buttress that I just showed you, right? So this is the T-bar roof buttress. It ends here because the T-bar roof is going to go in front of it, that clear piece we talked about earlier. And then again, I said solid metal roof here. These are the tops of your headlights. So these are the flippers. You notice they've got an axle, if you will, built into them because these do operate once they're installed. If you choose to do that way, you have your sort of rear mud guards. And then you have your two engine deck options. This engine deck with all of the ribbing for your pleasure on it is the supercharged engine. This one with a little bit of ribbing on for her pleasure is the naturally aspirated one. And this right here, my friends, is the supercharger itself, which goes onto that other gray piece we showed you in place of the naturally aspirated engine plenum. So that is what that is for. The inside of the two engine hoods, if you will, are riddled with with not so much sig marks, but with injector pin marks. So keep in mind these do have, again, hinges on them, so they are designed to be open to see that engine. Cleanup of this will be key to, if you're going to do any sort of contest with it, to not have this open up and be like, hey, look what I didn't pay attention to. The inside of the solid metal roof doesn't really have any kind of detail engraved into it for a headliner. And that, my friends, is that. That is the parts of the kit itself. So now we go on to the wheels. So the wheels, you notice, are sort of like the seats in the sense that they are two tiny little parts runners all to their own, which of course would also indicate that other versions of this kit may in fact include different sets of wheels. Yeah, they look good. They're in a nice, flat metal, aluminum-ish kind of chrome, if you will. These little knobs here are the little center caps for the wheel, and really not a whole heck of a lot to say beyond that. They are male fitments, like Tamiya wheels are, where the peg is in here. So swapping these out, you could do for other Hasegawa wheels, other Tamiya wheels. Doing any kind of Aoshima or Fujimi wheel is going to require you to build your own wheel stud to put them in with, but that is that. And then we come to our chromity chrome tree here. And your chromity chrome tree, being in this weird shape, indicates to me that there are other versions of this kit coming. So you have the reflectors for your rear tail lights, and then your side mirror inserts, and then these are the headlight reflectors, and then these are the exhaust tips. So obviously this is the outside, that's the inside. You notice that this is partially matte coated, and then they clear coated the front, which really makes this pop. I'd love to know what process this is and if it's available in a can of paint, because if I could paint my parts just dull silver and then magically make them chrome, that would be super duper awesome. Little slide molding here on this little bit here so that these are punched out and not solid. Again, throw a little gunmetal in there to make them pop, and you're all set. Alright, so the body. That's what we all came here to see, right? That's what we all came here to see. So you have your two little Toyota MR2. For comparison, here is a BMW 2002. And the MR2 is a tiny little car. Not that the 2002 is a huge car, but nevertheless, it shows its size there. Everything looks good on this as far as just initial sort of overview of the car and the looks of it. I don't see anything that's wildly out of proportion. It's kind of hard to tell totally because everything is detached panel-wise, right? So your rear bumpers are separate and your front bumpers separate. Here's the little hole where that intercooler goes into we were just talking about. You do have divots in the body for the side repeaters, so if you're going to try to make a North American car out of that, you'll need to fill those holes. And then, of course, your hood and everything all separate here. A lot of people be like, whoa, what about an engine? Well, yeah, the engine doesn't go up here, remember? So that is obviously for ease of making this something else in the future. Molded into the roof here, this is obviously molded as sort of like the T-bar roof style, right? Are the actual sun visors, and then there's a little attachment point on the inside for the rear view mirror. This is just an ease of removal, because this is obviously the bottom of the tool where the ejector pins are going to be hitting, and if for some reason if it got stuck in the face side of the tool, instead of prying it out, you would just grab it by this piece and take it out. Most of this stuff is automated at this point. There's not literally somebody taking one body out of this thing every 45 seconds, but if it would get stuck, that with this delicate as this roof is, being, you know, not solid, having this piece up here obviously keeps it from crushing in shipment, but it also aids in removal. There's also the little interior dome light engraved into here as well. A lot of also ejector marks engraved in here as well, so keep that in mind as you're going along. But overall, it looks pretty good. Your mold lines are really, really well hidden on Hasegawa kits at this point, for the most part. Your mold line comes sort of down the outside edge of this windshield, and then onto this panel and runs down the front of the fender. On the rear, because this entire roof is separate, you don't have a lot, you know, your mold lines are going to be hidden underneath of all of this, regardless of whether or not you have the metal roof or the glass roof. So again, your lines are going to, you just see a little bit of wispy flash. So right in this area here, that's the edge of that panel line that comes down, runs through the trunk line, and then it's going to come down inside of the steel work, if you will, of the rear fascia. So unless you're planning to run this around without the rear bumper onto it, it's literally something you're never going to see. So cleanup of this is very, very quick. A little bit of sanding around the edges to sort of bring them into play. These panels could probably stand to be used to be deepened, but that's almost every model kit these days. These are certainly not the worst panel lines in terms of depths I've seen Hasegawa do, so they're pretty good as it is. You know, this engraving here for this fuel cap or fuel tank cover, however you want to, fuel door. There it is. I knew I'd think of it in a second. The fuel door is a little weak. I'd definitely scribe that out. You don't want to lose that in the paint, but otherwise, everything about this looks pretty good, actually. So that leaves us with just the paperwork, if you will, for this kit. So included in here with this kit, you have a set of window masks. They are labeled. They will correspond to the instructions, but they are the windshield, the opera windows, and then the glass roof inserts if you choose to do the T-bar, if you want to go about it. And then this is your decal sheet. Again, you're made in Japan, printed on a non-glossy print cards thing they've been doing. You have all of this, you may notice on the box art, all the silver trim, that's all on here as decals. If you want to go about it that way rather than trying to paint it, you have your little MR2 logo for the front. And then, yeah, depending on which version of this you build is which ones of these decals you use, right? So you don't use this set of decals up here is for the solid roof, or not so much the solid roof, but the naturally aspirated car. This set down here says supercharger on it, and it is obviously for the car with the supercharged induction in it. You have this little sunscreen line that you put under the front windshield from the inside, and then this little Toyota logo that's backwards here is the one that goes into that little piece of clear that we showed you earlier. This is the sort of the under seal, if you will, for the supercharger. So this goes on the inside of the trunk lid and would be like sitting on top of the supercharger inlet. Some MR2 logos there, and a number of numbers and a couple of different prefecture designations here for making your own license plate on those license plate backs. You would just paint white and then put these numbers and letters onto your interior as well, and pretty much all you're going to see there in terms of that. A bunch of little bits and pieces of decals there. You don't realize what you need for until you get into building the kit. So here are the instructions. I need to stand myself up so I can see, make sure that I'm pointing at everything in a logical manner. So here's a little bit about the car, the MR2's development, this kit specifically in terms of down here. Pause that and read it if you want to. Opening up Hasegawa decals, they are the old trifold style. Nothing surprising about that necessarily. On the front page here, you get a parts map, which shows you everything. And on here, you can see things that you are not using already. So remember, there were 2 rearview mirrors. There were a couple of different tow hooks. Obviously, you're not using those, so they will be for the next version. Down here, you have your paint callouts for the actual kit. Again, pause that to read it if you want to. And we come into the model kit. We are modeling right off the bat. We are starting, again, like I mentioned, in the interior. So here you can see this is suggesting you paint this interior 37, which is RLM Gray Violet. It's a bluish tinted gray, basically, and it's not probably too far away from the actual color of this car in terms of its interior. Little detail painting on the headrest, which is what this black callout is for. 92 in Mr. Hobby, Mr. Color is semi-gloss black. So it's suggesting you paint the back of the headrest, which matches the front of the headrest, and the upper shoulders, if you will, of the seats that gray violet, and then paint the back of the seat black to represent that hard plastic. But again, these seats are going to be really crammed in here. Let me go down here, this step down here to show you. They're really crammed in here. You're only really going to see very upper edge of this and the headrest. So you could probably get away with just painting this very, very top part underneath the headrest, right, like to this line, basically. Paint this little area black and not have to worry about masking it off, really complicated. Like, you could throw a couple pieces of tape on each side of this, paint the middle a little bit black, and call it a day. Beyond that, again, body color for the outside here. This is telling you to paint it one for this Toyota Super White that the box art car is. Keep in mind, I would go through here on a car like this where there's so many things detached and highlight out what things need to be body color in advance so you don't forget things. Telling you to paint the chassis basically flat black with a German gray trim on sort of the door panels themselves. The center console here with its 2 build options, right? So stick shift or automatic with a decal for the automatic gear selector part, telling you which ways are forward. Into your dashboard construction. This is pretty self-explanatory, I think, and I'm going to go through every little bit of it. And this down here telling you to chop the brake and clutch off and put the single brake in if you want to do the automatic. Then you come down here to get your doors in, and your doors are going to be mostly German gray with the violet inserts on them on this, so make sure that you are, again, paying attention to how you're masking so that your interior comes out correctly. And then we go on to your chassis. Your chassis, again, body color. So that's important. This is the bottom of that engine thing we showed you, which the engine's going to mount to, this part right here. A couple of things on here need to be painted black. A couple of things on here need to be painted metallic. You got your drain plugs they call out for being painted a separate color. So a lot of detail in this chassis you can't really see with it being white on video. Mounting engine into the transaxle, mounting the sway bars, the uprights, telling you how to paint your disc brakes and things over here, and this will get you going. Kind of important on Hasegawa instructions for the most part. If they are giving you an assembly order, assemble it in that order. Save yourself the trouble of thinking you're smarter than the people that made this kit are. Now, there's a lot of times where model kits, you can assemble them out of order. We all know that. If you have any experience building model kits, you realize that. But on a lot of these, doing them in the numeric order is going to make the most sense. So go back to the interior here for a second. Number 1 is putting the center console in. Number 2 is putting the upper center console in. Number 3 is putting the seats in. Go ahead. Put the seats in, then try to cram this in here, and then try to make this fit in here. Go ahead. I'll wait. I'll see how frustrated you get with that. So here, obviously, you're putting the sway bar in first. You're putting the uprights in second. You're putting the actual upper or lower torsion arms on last. Makes sense, I would think, for most people, but again, just it's numerical for a reason. Try to follow it to a certain extent, or at least test fit everything before you glue it, so you're not making a glaring error. This gives you sort of the rest of your bottom of your chassis, right? You got your little bits of covering area for wiring and cabling and everything that went into, again, this coolant system that came back to the engine, along with putting on your exhaust pipe itself. Over here, we come into building the front of the suspension. Again, brake painting instructions. Numerically, things are 7 different steps of getting all this stuff put in here. So again, try to follow the instructions. Might help you out a bit. I mean, I would personally put this onto these, not hovering over the top of here like this. I would have this already attached to these 2 parts and bring it in as a whole unit. But again, same principle nonetheless. So steering arm, sway bars, lower A arms, and all that stuff. Then you come down here to sort of the top of the chassis. The one thing I don't really appreciate with this is like all of a sudden it wants you to paint half the back of the chassis flat black. That would have been good to know back here before I start assembling things so that I don't have to try to mask off all of this crap that I've already attached to the car now. So always look ahead in your Hasegawa instructions. Make sure that you are painting every part of everything at one time and not coming back to realize that, oh snap, I've got a problem. Your rear bulkhead, again, body color. Make sure you're keeping track of that. Front, your radiator with your electric fans gives you an idea of make sure that you put it in there right side up or else it won't fit together in the end. This is your supercharger assembly, your non-supercharger assembly. So again, make your picks, and then we're slamming the actual chassis and interior together. So then we come over here into the back half of the festivities. Last page over here is just the instructions for the decals. Look at that in a second. So here's the first bit of how we're going to put the body together. So this has you paint the entire, well, the sidewalls of this car flat black as well. But the entire top of this car semi-gloss black, including the scuttle panel and all of that sort of front bracing and the top of the radiator ahead of time. Seems kind of silly, but then as you go together here, you'll see why that makes the most sense and sort of services you as a good paint guide, right? So it's telling you, again, to paint the whole inside of the car flat black. I would paint the inside of the car where you are going to see it flat black, so your inner fender wells and stuff like that. That's just basic modeling to a certain extent, as far as not having not painted the whole model. You're attaching your rear view mirror, your side panel here, and then it's making you choose your naturally aspirated hood or your turbo hood, telling you to tape it down to keep it there so that when you put this all together it locks those hinges into place correctly. You put this flying buttress inside of the actual car itself, mounting the window to it, painting the trim, body color, again make sure you're painting everything correctly. This shows your window mask and your painting scheme for the T-bar roof should you choose to do that, right? So smoke the whole window, then come back and mask off the panels, and that'll give you smoke glass with the surround. Or you go ahead and you put the metal roof on. Outside flying buttress, glass roof, and that little front lip to the windshield. You don't need this front lip to the windshield if you're putting the metal roof on. So make sure, again, this is body color, this is body color. Make sure you're getting all your body color stuff together when you're painting this body so that when you're done, you're not missing this piece here. It's sitting on a runner, staring at you, and you're trying to figure out what in the world it is and why this roof doesn't attach correctly. And then back here, we're just putting this whole thing together. And all right, so let's flip her over onto the back pages here and look at the last 5 steps. On this step 12 here, we're going to be assembling, obviously, the windows in here, giving you a detailed description of how to paint your windows. You've got window masks, of course, the front window, and those opera side glass pieces here, and then you're going to paint the sort of outside window frame, a semi-gloss black on the outside of the windows, showing you to paste that, they say paste in here, but obviously you're going to decal in that sort of that sun stripe on the inside of the windshield. Don't put it on the outside, it won't stick because the glue is on the inside of the decal. Put the windows in, put the wipers on, come down here, you're putting your headlights together. Seeing here's a couple of decals for each of the headlight bezel backs, so if you decide to display them in the up position, that sort of flexible material that you reach around back in here, change your light bulb stuff with, is represented by the decals. Yeah, I mean, all in all, remember, your door flippers are body color, hood's body color, obviously lower valance is body color, and then this is that grill we showed you earlier with one of the tow hooks installed. Down here at the very bottom of the page is installing the front bumper, putting in the side repeaters. It's showing to detail the screw heads on the turn signal reflectors, so that's kind of a little bit of an extra detail part that Hasegawa has been doing in their kits recently, showing you to paint the reflector bays silver so that there's a sort of a reflector back to the side repeaters, and a side mirror that we don't put the other side mirror on until we get all the way over on this side of the car. I would, I would wait until the last minute to put the side mirrors on. But again, keep in mind, The side mirrors on this car are body color completely, including the console, side that mounts to the body. So, again, keeping track of all your body parts, especially the outside of the body, painting them all at one time, all in one go, so that you don't end up with a front bumper that's a different shade than your splitter, that's a different shade than your body, a different shade than your mirrors. Always an optimum kind of idea. Up here on step 15, we're painting the clear piece for the whole rear taillight assembly here, showing you to paint the inside of it completely semi-gloss black, leaving out these open sections, which they do give you a 1:1, or they say it's scaled to 1/24 scale, but it is a 1:1 scale mask. If you want to tape these off to paint them, that's always an option. And then on the outside, you paint a good chunk of the outside of the semi-gloss black as well, and then telling you detail out the 8, which is silver for the keyhole, and then 47 is you're going to be your clear red, 49 your clear amber, leaving this clear entirely for the backup light. And then this whole shabam goes, of course, there with the taillight reflectors, putting on your exhaust pipes. I have officially lost this piece. This is the base to the telescoping radio antenna that you only use for the T-top roof, because the steel roof has its own radio antenna that's built into the roof itself. I don't know where this piece went. It's one of those, I don't know that it was ever even on the tree. It's a teeny tiny piece. It's probably the size of a pinhead. Most people probably wouldn't even notice it's missing necessarily, but yeah, it's kind of annoying. And yeah, we come down here saying, to number 2, you would cut off the little mounting tab here that pokes up the hole to sort of receive the telescoping antenna base. So again, a little bit of extra. Would have been nice, right, to know that you need to cut this off before you painted the car and assembled 3/4 of it. But again, always look ahead in your Hasegawa instructions. Key thing building these kits. Alright, so we're here telling you to push on the back of your headlights to flip them if you choose to do so. These are independent of each other, so you can't put one up or one down if you want to do this car sort of a decrepit, sort of field find or something like that. Putting in that inside out Toyota logo, again putting smoke on that clear sort of rear window piece that goes across the top of your flying buttress here. Spoiler on, tailgate area, rear bumpers on here with a pair of tow hooks. Giving you very in-depth, descriptions of how the tow hooks go in here, how they mount. Putting your wheels and tires together is the last thing. Me personally, I will put the wheels and tires together and mount them to the chassis prior to putting the body together, because I do not want to be flipping this thing onto its roof and having it ride the bench, with just the chassis and everything like that. I put my chassis on their wheels so the wheels can take all the dirt and abuse of being scooched around and moved as you assemble things. You do have those mud guards here telling you to paint them body color once again, so there's another something to remember to have on hand when you're doing your painting. And then the back sides of these are flat black, and the little part that they mount into on the inside of the wheel well is also flat black. But that's not a big deal, because if you recall, way back when, we had to paint that inside part flat black anyway. So that wraps up the assembly part. We go on to the decal page, which does mention you only put the supercharger decals on the supercharger kit. There are decals that you would put here instead of your supercharger. There are other trim things here for the naturally aspirated version. That, yeah, gives you an overview, sort of a last look at painting, right? So, you should paint the little black knobs on the top of the T-tops. Make sure you paint the black on your windshield washers and all that sort of thing. So overall, a pretty decent representation of the car. Gives you a little bit of other pictures here with your headlights being up, and then back here with that your little brace, or not a brace, it's the outside of the outside of the buttress, but the supercharger with that decal in place to make the top of the supercharger outlet, if you will. But that sort of gives you an idea of why painting the inside of that at one time ends up working out well, because this brace goes over top of this trim panel, and all of this trim and everything will be all painted for you going in, and you don't have to come back and mask it off later. I think it's a pretty nifty little bit of engineering in terms of Hasegawa's breakdown of the parts there to make painting as painless as possible for something like this. So anyway, guys, that wraps up this review of the new tool Hasegawa Toyota MR2. Whole bunch of words. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you guys on the next one.